Welcome to That Annuity Show, the podcast that will make you an expert in explaining annuities to your clients. Give us 30 minutes each week and we'll shave hours from your client presentations. Now, here's your host, Paul Tyler.
Welcome to another episode of That Annuity Show. Today we're sharing a great panel from a recent conference, RetireTech Las Vegas, led by George Esposito, on the role of regulation in shaping innovation.
As the last panel ended with, we are in a regulated space, and I'm very pleased to have four leading commissioners from the NAIC here at Medicarians and RetireTech. It speaks to the level of collaboration we have with our regulators as we grow the space through technology and AI. So I want to thank the commissioners for coming. I know they have very busy schedules. Commissioner Hudak, I'd like to start with you. There may be folks here at the conference that don't quite understand the dynamics in insurance regulation in the U.S. Can you illuminate some of that for us?
Absolutely, and thanks for having us here today. This is great. I always appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about the insurance regulatory work we do. So insurance is unique in the financial services industry in that it's the only sector of financial services that's regulated primarily at the state level. And what that really means from a practical standpoint is that, each state has its own regulatory jurisdiction and has a commissioner or someone who leads the office and has a whole team of people who regulate their individual market. So if you're a company that's doing business in multiple states, you actually have to deal with different jurisdictions because each state is a different jurisdiction. And so for us as regulators, it's important that we are in regular communication with each other, and we do that through our national association, which is the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, where we come together and talk about trends that we see emerging, talk about any potential problems that might be on the horizon. We work on developing model legislation, model bulletins, really trying to have as much, to the extent possible, uniformity and consistency in how we're regulating our individual markets, for the benefit of policyholders and the benefit of companies as well. And so it's different in compared to other financial services industries where you have, obviously, the federal government is the primary regulator. And so, it's really the feds that you have to pay attention to. But if you're in insurance, you really have to understand the dynamics of all these states, DC and the 5 territories, and how all those different jurisdictions work together and interplay with each other in terms of kind of the regulatory landscape.
Thank you, Commissioner. We're here to talk about technology and artificial intelligence, among many other things in our insurance space. And today, there is no U.S. federal legislation on AI. We do have President Biden's executive order, but we have no other uniform federal standard on AI. Commissioner Bahrain, as the chair of NAIC's Innovation, Cybersecurity, and Tech Committee, also known as the H Committee, what are the most significant challenges you see in regulating AI and machine learning in our industry?
So I would say that the largest challenge is to balance the need for innovation, the need to encourage the creative uses of technology and bring those benefits to our constituents, because technology is a phenomenal way to break through barriers, make products more accessible, et cetera. So to balance all of the good things around technology, AI, machine learning, against the potential for unseen and unintended negative consequences. And so, one of the things the NAIC has worked very hard at is trying to strike that balance in a very iterative fashion. So, we started with broad, high-level principles, which most regulatory jurisdictions have done. And then we've now moved to the next iterative step, which is to be more process-focused in governance and risk management. And then we will continue the journey to discuss where it is that, we may need to look at AI more carefully, or applications or data, et cetera, recognizing that our primary goal is to make sure that our constituents are served and that they are not harmed.
we hear a lot about balance, right? We have to balance innovation with transparency, fairness, and accountability. And I know that the regulators on this panel, as well as many of us in the audience that work for third-party vendors to the insurance carriers or for the carriers themselves, are very keenly aware of that. Commissioner, as the president of the NAIC, Commissioner Mays, what are you looking to achieve on your agenda as it relates to AI and technology, and what could the folks in this room and at this conference help with as you think through your agenda for the year?
Thank you again for having me here today. And I was listening to what Commissioner Brain said, and it goes back to what we at the NAIC find important. You can tell a lot about an organization by its structure. The NAIC is, as Commissioner Hudek mentioned, a national system of state-based regulation. We've got 56 members who pretty much have to agree on everything we do. And a few years ago, we created the first new high-level committee in more than 2 decades to deal with technology and innovation. This year, as we do every year, we create a list of regulatory priorities. And it's a long, boring process getting there, I will tell you that, because the president has to go through.
No, it's very exciting.
You need help. And then after you go through it with staff, you go through it, decide what you think will be the priorities, you go through it with the officers, and you go through it with our executive committee, and then finally with plenary. So 56 different members, 56 of us, different geographies, different demographics, different political backgrounds, and we all have to agree on what's important. And technology, cyber, AI is one of our top regulatory priorities for this year. Why? Because it's a tool. That's a bottom line to me. AI is a tool. And for me, somebody like me, my goal for my year as president, my theme is Mind the Gap. And that is about closing that coverage gap. I travel all over this country, and I'm in Connecticut, seeing all over the difference between what people should have for insurance and what they actually do have, the difference between the economic loss they may suffer and the insured loss. And it's a problem, because if something happens, it's not just a bunch of numbers on a page, it's lives that can't be rebuilt. It's homes that are going to go by the wayside. It's families that are not going to be able to make that next step. One story I like telling is from my old days at Deloitte. Was with Deloitte with the insurance industry practice for quite a while. And one of the leaders, I always like asking people, how'd you get into this industry? Because, I kind of was dragged into it. It's a second career. It wasn't something I ever thought I'd do. And one of the leaders, I asked her how she got in. And she was telling me that when she was a teenager, her father died. But because he'd taken care of the family with life insurance, she was able to go to school. She was able to go to grad school. She was able to be successful. That's what insurance does. Insurance is here. Doesn't matter until you need it. Technology, AI, can enable people to get the coverage they need with as little friction as possible, as efficient as possible, and certainly get products that are as relevant as possible. So that's why, I know the concerns with AI, believe me, and I'm well aware of the concerns. We keep watching for them. We don't need to replicate what happened. The biases of the past cannot be embedded in the systems of the future, and we know that can happen. But I do think technology offers us a path forward to protect the consumers that we are sworn to protect.
I think that's great insight. As folks in the insurance business, we can't lose sight of the fact that we have to be at our best when folks are at their worst, right? They're leveraging the insurance in many cases when they need it the most. And it's on us to deliver a frictionless, transparent experience that gives them the outcome they need, which is the benefit they signed up for, as well as a smooth delivery and a sensitive delivery to what they're going through. Commissioner Downing, in Montana, have you seen anything as the population ages and they are buying more annuities and relying on annuities, are you seeing positive or negatives with technology delivery to that demographic?
No, we're not aging.
So the American population is aging.
Well, a couple of things. Yeah, that we're doing actually a lot of work on that in the state of Montana. But a couple of comments first. I just want to mention, as was said before with the NEIC, we're a lot of different jurisdictions, a lot of different ideas, a lot of different ways of approaching things. And what I like about the group is we try to come with these, consensus, ideas, and it goes through a very laborious process, like Commissioner Mays mentioned. But then, we might have these differences that we do as states as well. And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And also, one of the things, talking about the H committee that was formed, was that 2 years ago? It was fairly recent, recently. And Commissioner Bahrain has been chairing that, and I think very well, because a lot of it's been very concept-based, not necessarily prescriptive, which is, I think, the way you start this, and as Commissioner Bahrain said, kind of drilling down into it, because at the end of the day, I can't remember which one of you said it, it's a tool. And what do we care about? We care that people don't break the law. What do we care about as regulators? We care about solvency. We care about illegal discrimination. We care about rates that are, adequate and not excessive. I mean, these are the rules we care about. So is this tool doing something that breaks that law or not? And that's something that we care about. And some of the things that I think that Commissioner Mays is concerned about is are there biases being introduced in these new systems? And, that's a good question. And one of the things that I keep coming back to with artificial intelligence, with big data, with machine learning, with all, this brave new world that we're dealing with, is if you're producing something from data and you're producing results and you have a wide enough and tall enough data set, which is hard to, determine in and of itself. And just my background, in case I geek out too much here, is I was a research scientist at the Quran Institute of Mathematical Sciences before I came into this, so I might think of things a little bit too numerically. But if you grind it through something that you have a rich, broad data set and it gives you an answer that you don't like, well, that becomes a public policy decision. And I think a lot of people just assume that the machine is bad. I mean, the machine can give you bad data, but I don't necessarily subscribe to the fact that, or the idea that it is. And so getting to your actual question, we deal with issues on the negative side all the time. Actually, I was just talking to Commissioner Bahrain in the break room earlier. I just had my first AI call last week. And it took me about 3 or 4 times of trying to get this woman's attention on the other side of the phone until I realized it was AI. And she was speaking to me, and I said, well, before you go any further, I just want you to let you know that I am the regulator for the state of Montana. And then she asked if I wanted to be taken off the list. I'm going, no. And so we went through this iteration about 3 times, and I'm going, that's a robot. And so that's out there. And I just had my first one last week, but I'm a little bit unique. Well, there's a few of us. I don't just regulate insurance, I also regulate securities. And we just see so much fraud right now being perpetrated against our seniors using artificial intelligence, using technology, using all these new tools available. And it's getting harder and harder. And us as regulators, we want to be open to innovation, but we're never going to keep up. We're always going to be kind of trying to catch up. And that's kind of a scary thought, which I think is one of the good reasons we're talking about, big concepts and things that you should be looking at and aware of, and making sure that something isn't being used to illegally discriminate or to harm, or in my case on the security side, to flat out steal from. And it's getting harder and harder for us because these tools are getting better and better. And even with AI that can now mimic somebody's voice and even their animate their faces now, it's good today. It's going to be better tomorrow. I mean, in a few weeks, it's going to be impossible to figure out. So what do we do as regulators to make sure that we're watching out for what's around the corner? Because it's going to get better faster than we can get smarter.
Yeah, and I just like to build on that a little bit too. I mean, that's something that we talk about, at the NASC, but we talk about internally in our agency is, yes, there might be a need for new laws, new regulations to fill kind of the regulatory gaps of this emerging technology. But before we get to that point, it's about understanding how the existing laws and regulations need to be applied. Because, as Commissioner Mays said, it's a tool. It's no different than when companies started using the internet, right? You can't use the internet and then somehow, because you're using the internet, not abide by the existing laws and regulations at that time. Similarly with AI, you still have to abide by the laws. You need to treat policyholders fairly, make sure everything is being done the same as it was before AI. And like I said, maybe we need some new laws, maybe we need some new regulations, but before we get to that point, understanding from a regulatory standpoint how our existing regulatory tools, framework, need to be applied to this new technology, I think is important. It's something that we've been working on with the development of the AI Bulletin and a lot of work that's happening under the H Committee right now.
Well, that's the foundation, right, of the bulletin, is the idea that this is, as Andy mentioned, it's a tool, it's a methodology, it's it's a way decisions get made, it's a way that models get developed. And when we're talking about what is already regulated activity, so insurance companies, when they make decisions that impact consumers, when they take certain actions, those are regulated already, and they're regulated under a system of laws. Now, that doesn't mean that over the course of time, that laws may not have to be tweaked or changed or developed to particularly accommodate this methodology. But essentially, our laws already give us that background. And that's when we developed the bulletin as really a comprehensive. I think if you look at a number of states that worked on it, came together, really fully half of the membership was deeply involved in the actual drafting process. That level of consensus at a commissioner level, the consensus is that we have a regulatory framework, a statutory framework in play. And what we need to do is think about how to apply that to this particular set of tools. And I think along those lines, as Troy mentioned, our work has been mostly principles-based because I'm an insurance regulatory lawyer. I am not a computer scientist. I am not a mathematician. And so I think it's that we have to be very, very careful when we move deeply into areas of subject matter expertise to ourselves do no harm. So I think we've been very, very careful, particularly under Andy's leadership, in making sure that we move deliberately, cautiously, and in ways that help but don't harm.
And Commissioner Brain actually stole a bunch of the words I was going to use. But I do think, because I was looking, there's a question here. Do you have a perspective on how AI regulation is shaping up in Europe? And I do think it's instructive if you look at what's happening in the U.S. versus what's happening in Europe. What's happening in the U.S. is more encouraging innovation. It is principles-based. It's that ethical. We expect you to be ethical. Do no harm. We're not going to prescribe specific things. We expect you to have a risk management framework. We expect you to make sure the data going in is clean. We expect you to validate the outcomes. Within that, it's going to be up to you. Whereas our European friends, my friends in IOPA, who I love dearly, and I said that with a straight face, but they tend to be a lot more prescriptive. They figure they know what they're doing. They're sitting in an office. They've got the benefit of their years of experience, and they are going to tell everybody else how to do it. The reason we won't do that is because if we knew everything, A, we'd be running companies. We wouldn't be insurance commissioners. And B, that's not the way to get the market to develop. We want to make sure that the market develops, that the market uses these tools properly to enlarge the outreach, to reach more people, to sell more product, frankly, to provide people with the coverage they need.
You and I have talked about this a few times, Commissioner Brain, and you as well, Commissioner Beck. At our companies, we have AI guidelines that are also principles-based. To your point, we have risk management frameworks that govern the activities that we undertake, and we're applying thoughtful steps. And I think the H Committee's bulletin leans into that. If you read the bulletin and you kind of take inferences on what you could be doing as a carrier or a provider, you can glean a lot. How can the folks in this room and at this conference meet with you, come to your offices with your staff, and share what we're doing with technology and artificial intelligence and how it's enhancing delivery, and how the commissioners can perhaps be learning of, as you just said, what we're doing on the business side to help inform what you're doing on the regulatory side?
Well, I'm going to speak very briefly to what the NAIC is doing, and then I think each of these guys can talk about their particular state. So we are revitalizing one of our working groups within the NAIC, which is our Innovation InsurTech Working Group, which exists specifically to create those kinds of communications. And Eric Dunning, who is the Nebraska Commissioner, is running that working group this year, and he is setting up 2 meetings, one in Chicago, I don't know where the other one is yet, but with the specific idea of creating a place where those conversations can happen. So the NAIC is creating a pathway where we are able to get and have really good interaction, interface, answer questions, so that we get an idea of what's kind of cutting edge, what's coming on the horizon. At the same time, you get the ability to step into what it is that we're doing and sort of talk about what the regulatory issues are. So that is absolutely coming in 2024.
I know I will take you up on that. I'm sure there's a lot of folks at this conference that will take you up on that. Commissioner Hudak, one of the things that I think the fintech industry has done well is increase financial literacy among folks on every part of the spectrum on how financial products work. What can insurtech providers, distributors, and the carriers do for the insurance literacy in the U.S.? And what are you seeing in Wisconsin with your constituents?
I mean, I'd say we're all aware of the, retirement gap issues and the concerns about, you see numbers like 40% of Americans couldn't afford $400 in an emergency, and half of Americans between the age of 55 and 65 have no retirement savings at all. So we know we have a lot of work to do in that space. And I think, 2 related issues can really help with that. One being financial literacy, raising awareness of the importance of just understanding your finances, with insurance being a key component of that. We are actually co-chairs of the Governor's Council on Financial Literacy and Capability in Wisconsin, along with our Department of Financial Institutions. And obviously the financial institution, the banking, that side is very important, but we regularly bring up the importance of insurance as part of that conversation as well, making sure that people understand all the different needs of insurance, homeowners, auto, life, health, across the board. And then related to that, and in line with everything we've been saying here, is obviously technology can help a lot. We see a lot of tech-enabled insurance products that are being sold, obviously new distribution channels through mobile platforms, through the internet, and that's all a positive. Being able to use chatbots. Younger generations don't necessarily want to talk to an agent face-to-face. They don't necessarily want to go through the process of biometric screening to buy life insurance. And that's where accelerated underwriting, where some of these other kind of AI tools can really be helpful in just making the insurance distribution process more seamless, and really the whole experience of dealing with an insurance company easier overall. Filing a claim, just asking a basic question. I think there's a lot of benefit, but again, it's twofold. One is that financial literacy component. At a young age, we're proud in Wisconsin, we just passed a law that high schools now are required to teach a financial literacy course for students to graduate. That's been in the works for a lot of years, finally got that done. I think that's going to be very important. And then that combined with the ease of being able to purchase insurance and just understand, a lot of people might get a little nervous if they have to talk to an agent, have that face-to-face conversation, and nothing against agents. Agents are great, they play an important role, but for some people, they want to be able to go online and learn at their own speed, ask questions, get information in the way that's best for them. And that's where new technology tools can really be helpful in hopefully closing that gap.
Yeah, and we struggle with that a little bit on, the app-based agents, on are they asking the right questions? Because very often when somebody is going to an app and they are afraid to talk to somebody, they're often just looking for price. They're saying, what's the cheapest thing I can get here? Without somebody trying to talk them out, well, not necessarily to talk them out of it, but understand what they're not buying. And so it's interesting dealing with that, and I think that's an education issue as well. I mean, when you have all these commercials saying here you can get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, people are looking for cheaper and cheaper, and sometimes you need an agent to say, well, yes, that's very cheap, but you're not getting this and this and this. And so I kind of struggle with that of not having that interaction of somebody that knows their client and talks to them about what they may not be getting. But I think that comes under the education part. And I'm glad to hear what you're doing in Wisconsin with financial literacy education, because that's a huge issue with my office, both on the security side and on the insurance side. And you always think of this as, okay, let's give this education to high school students or to college students about how to invest and build a future for themselves. But we've got communities in Montana where it's multi-generation, never even had a checking account. And you're starting from just square zero on some of this stuff. And so we find that we have to hit younger and younger. And so we're going to, junior high and younger, to try to get these concepts to them so that they actually, have something to build upon once we get there. And it's a struggle because there's a lot of kids that are coming out of some of these communities that just don't have the basic tools to thrive in the modern future. And anyway, so sorry to interrupt you there, but I came out of the tech side, and I love all the tools you get on the tech, but sometimes it scares me because you lose that human touch, and they're not asking the right questions.
There has to be a blend, right? There's a certain part of the consumer experience that is going to want the agent, and then there are others, as Commissioner Hudek had mentioned, that prefer to do things online, and maybe the last mile is with an agent. And one of the things that we're keenly aware of is how do you service both, because both require exceptional delivery. I want to comment on one item. I have said this several times that I love coming to work at Zinnia every day because of the energy that you feel. We are trying to do things differently. We are delivering to carriers, distributors, agents. It's exciting. There's a lot of energy. And I know in Connecticut, there has been a lot of energy around InsurTech for a while. And I think what you've done in that state has been a bit of a roadmap and template for many other states. So I'd like to ask you, Commissioner Mays, how do you feel about what your state has done in InsurTech, and how can other states look at what you've done and replicate it?
Well, part of what we have to do, part of what we've done is look at the entire landscape. We've worked in partnership, but it hasn't simply been the department, although there is a dedication, an openness, a willingness to work with InsurTechs. Susan from Metro Hartford is sitting there. I noticed you looking down.
Wave, Susan. Where are you?
And yeah, they've done a tremendous amount of work with InsurTechs. We've got InsurTech Hartford. Part of what we see is we've got an ecosystem just like Silicon Valley, for instance. And what we need to do is to bring people together. If you come to Hartford, you will see that there are places where you InsurTechs can actually, there are incubators for them. You will see InsurTechs coming from Israel or South Africa or Stanford or New York, because there is that energy there. And there is that understanding that for many of the people coming from InsurTech, or many of the InsurTech people, they're coming at it from the tech side. Okay? Insurance is an incredibly regulated industry, and it's difficult to understand. We want to make sure that we help you get there, that you're not going down the wrong pathway. We want to make sure that you share with us what you're doing so we can understand, and we share with you what we look for. And we've had a significant amount of success. I think one of the latest things we had, certainly in Hartford, was the UK Hartford insurance corridor. And we've had a number of companies come over as we move to expand opportunities for Connecticut companies in the UK. and for the UK to bring their companies over here, because there is a certain cross-pollination. And as we do this, we're all keeping in mind the point of this is to provide the products, is to serve consumers. That's what we're trying to do. So if you're working on something that's going to help consumers, we're going to do everything we can to help you.
Well, just a little bit, I applaud that. One of the things in Montana, we're trying to be open to innovation and trying to work with folks on doing that. We passed our last legislative session a InsureTech regulatory sandbox. And it was kind of a long time going, because whenever people would come up to us and say they wanted the sandbox, my question would always be, why? What can you not do in the current regulatory framework that you need this for? And I would say, well, what I care about is, solvency and, all the things that I talked about. And usually I'd get crickets after that, and they wouldn't have a product. And so we kind of went through these machinations for, well, probably my first almost 3 years in office, until somebody finally did come with an idea. And I said, okay, I can see that being right for that. And it was really, we haven't seen the whole proposal yet, but it was basically trying innovative products for getting injured workers back to work quickly in the workers' compensation space. And I said, okay, that makes sense. And so we ended up getting that, on the books. And really, we want to make sure that we're, open for ideas, as long as we don't, cross the reason we all exist up here is to protect consumers, and make sure that nobody's crossing that boundary. And that gives us a tool where ultimately the way it was written is, we have to give a nod on whether it's going to actually be a product or not. But, as long as I've got assurances that it's not going to, erase any of those boxes that we care about as regulators. I want to see innovation. I want to see, new product. I want to see exciting new things. I want people to bring things that I haven't even, dreamed of yet to, do this, as long as it's not, erasing one of those basic, protections that we have there.
As two states on the end here with many universities and folks leaving university, going to the job market, I didn't get into insurance until I was in my 30s. And it was a great decision, and I'm kind of wondering, why aren't folks in their 20s getting into insurance? I think it's something you get into later if you're not selling, right? I think actuarial programs at universities, InsureTech programs, incubators could be a natural opportunity for folks to say, okay, I've got a technology background or I've got a mathematics background. This is an industry that can provide longevity, can provide insight, a great career. How do you two see it in your respective states as it relates to education at the collegiate level? I know you and I have talked about University of Wisconsin. I'm interested in what you have to say as well, Commissioner Moraine.
So I would say that yes, and we are deeply involved in that effort in Maryland. So for example, several years ago, my predecessor was at an event with industry and at some large agency up in Western Maryland. They were talking about these interns that were in their office. Where did they come from? Temple. He's like, Temple? That, as far as I know, that's in Pennsylvania. You're in Maryland. What's going on here? And they said, well, there are no programs in Maryland. So we changed that. So now the University of Baltimore, has a degree program. We've now taken that into the community college level. So our goal is to look at what is that talent pipeline and understand across a whole variety of sectors and jobs. So we have been actively working with now the Moore-Miller administration and how we drive that message more carefully. And a very small example is that our community colleges in Maryland this year just set up, we had a pilot program starting in September, where you can go and you can get a certificate. So you do not need a college degree, you do not need an AA degree, but you can get a certificate in how to be an adjuster or an appraiser or a customer service representative. Those are great paying jobs that allow people to learn something about the industry, and then hopefully they go on and they develop those careers. We're doing the same thing at an AA level as a feeder program for the University of Baltimore's program, which is really more of a sort of financial analyst program. So we're hitting and putting all of those seeds together, starting with high school, then moving into community colleges, and then moving into other tracks. We have a relationship at the department with Morgan State. and their actuarial program. So we give their interns the opportunity to come and work at the Maryland Insurance Administration, so to give them real practical experience. So I think that those are all ways. I know, Nathan, you've talked about the University of Wisconsin.
Yeah, we're fortunate that at the University of Wisconsin, we have in our School of Business a risk management and insurance program that is considered one of the best in the country. And that's great. And actually, former Commissioner Mark Afable is working with Marquette University now in Milwaukee to help them build out an insurance program as well. And I know there are some other community schools and some of the University of Wisconsin system schools that are also building out risk management, actuarial science, computer science, which increasingly is important for insurance companies, because it's important. I mean, we have a lot of companies. We have American Family, Century, Northwestern Mutual, a lot of companies in the Fox Valley that want to find talent locally and want to be able to tap into the tech college system, the university system, and there are a lot of partnerships that exist, but it's still a struggle because of workforce challenges overall. But we're fortunate that there is a good ecosystem both between the universities, tech colleges, and the industry, and there's a lot of talk back and forth about, the industry companies will talk with their local universities, with their local technical colleges about what their needs are for the future, and the schools will respond by creating new programs and creating new pipelines, knowing that there will be opportunities if they bring people into those fields. So there's always more to do, but we are fortunate that overall the insurance industry and our educational community in Wisconsin works very well together.
Well, send us your strongest possible candidates for our internship program. We will consider them. We've got 2.5 minutes left. The title of this panel is Insuring Tomorrow. So I'd like to give each of you 30 seconds to tell us how you view how this room, this conference can do best to insure tomorrow. I guess you're first up.
Oh, gee, thanks. The old saying, keep your eyes on the prize, keep your eyes on the goal. The goal for insurance is to help people. It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward when you think of it. It's one of the few places you can actually go to work, make good money, and come home knowing that you've done a good job, that you've helped somebody. Question is, how do we get there? There are so many barriers that we see that we need to address, and there are so many barriers that technology can help us address. What do we do? How do we do it? How do we move forward? The one thing I know is that we've got to do it together, which is why my door is always open to anyone who wants to come by and chat. And consider that an invitation. As I mentioned at the start, to go back to where I started here, closing the coverage gap is my goal, and I know this will not happen today or this year, but bit by bit, we will get it done, because we must get it done. And technology provides the innovation that can drive towards that. So please, I want you to make as much money as you can, but do it the right way. Make the products as effective, as useful, and as helpful for people as they can be.
Well, since we've only got a minute left, I'll be quick. Well, I think really the best thing is that when I'm done with my term, I'm going to be replaced with an AI. So, no, I mean, just to be really quick on that, I think, we all understand what we need to do to protect consumers, fight discrimination, fraud, promote solvency. And other than that, I'm excited about what everything coming down the pipe is. I know there's a lot of innovators looking at a lot of things, and one of the things that I really hope is these innovators, these technology people, pair up with insurance people that understand regulated product.
Keep the human in the loop. Keep the human in mind. Keep that constituent in your head when you're developing that machine and that technology. To Andy's point, that's really where it begins, and it's where it ends. And that's the most important thing to remember, It's how to stay straight with your regulators. It's how I think to have success.
Education and technology adoption. I think those are, people need to be educated on what insurance needs they have and to make sure that they fill those needs. And I think technology adoption will help with that because it'll make every part of the insurance process easier for people. So I think that's the future.
Commissioners, we thank you very much for your insights and your time. Thank you for joining us on this panel, and we hope to see you at the next Retire Tech.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend us on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information at thatannuityshow.com.